Hello everybody, welcome to episode 5 of Ask Boxing Science. This is a very special episode as we introduce our boxing science nutritionist, Lee Ricards. Lee has a fantastic experience in football and in boxing and is now launched his own Instagram page, boxingscience_nutrition, where he's sharing lots of facts about nutrition for boxing and also some tasty recipes that you can put into your healthy diet. There's also a range of different services that he offers online. So he's got a bespoke nutrition service and also got a nutrition handbook to help get every percentage out of your diet to make sure that you're making weight safely and effectively. So I'll pass it over to Lee with some of your questions that you fired over to him on Instagram.
One of the most popular questions that we receive on the Boxing Science Nutrition page is recovery regarding around post-training. So it's really important that we have adequate protein, an adequate amount of carbohydrates, and also rehydrate appropriately around his training sessions. What we generally say to people is the 3 R's of recovery. So that's repair in terms of protein, refuel in terms of adequate amount of carbohydrates, and then rehydrate appropriately with fluid. We know that increasing these around our training sessions is going to maximise our recovery and help us adapt to training. So ideally we should have around a 20 to 40 gram serving of protein within the 1 to 2 hours post-training from our training session. Within that we also want carbohydrates, but this will depend on the intensity and the duration of our training session. In terms of a minimum amount, you should be looking at around 30 gram of carbohydrates in this session. If you are doing double training sessions and your first training session is quite high intensity and hard, then we need to increase these carbohydrates. This is so we can resynthesize glycogen to our muscles so we can perform in that second training session. In terms of amounts, this will depend on your current body weight, but also in terms of the next training session in how long we've got. A lot of the research suggests you should have around 1 to 1.2 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram. So for a 60 kilogram athlete, you're probably looking at around 70 gram of carbohydrates in a post-training meal. In terms of rehydration, what we know now is if you don't rehydrate properly in terms of delivering nutrients to muscles via blood, is going to be reduced. So what we say is take a post-training weight and compare it to your pre-training weight. So if you are 60 kilograms again before training, after training you are 58 kilograms, that is roughly around 2 kilogram weight loss we have achieved via dehydration. A lot of the ACSM guidelines in terms of the current literature suggest you want to replace that with 1.5 times the amount. So you would be looking at consuming around 3 litres of fluid in the space between your post-training and your next training session. Within this you'll probably want in some electrolytes as well, so therefore you're going to help rehydrate appropriately in terms of absorbing the appropriate fluid in terms of your muscles and cells and tissues. Another question that we often get on the Boxing Science Nutrition page regarding around females is nutrition during a menstrual cycle. And what I must say first and foremost is a lot of research around females' menstrual cycle is lacking, and it is now coming a lot more prevalent, and that's because a lot more people are speaking about it in terms of females, boxers, in terms of coaches and sports scientists. And it does really need to happen so we can get a lot of research done on this. Due to the research only being in its infancy, there is a lot of grey areas what we don't know. But what we do kind of know is during that menstrual cycle, in terms of energy levels are going to be reduced. So it's so important that during these days, in terms of on the menstrual cycle, we need to make sure we've got sufficient calorie intake. At this stage, appetite is usually reduced. So what we do is we need to increase calories in terms to match your energy expenditure. So this can be done via a lot of ways. Because appetite will be reduced, we need to make sure that in terms of the servings of food, the calories are quite high. You can do this by increasing some full fat foods within your diet. So it could be almost full fat Greek yogurt. Could be adding some peanut butter to some slice of toast and a banana and a bit of honey. So therefore we're having some good snacks there which are going to keep your calorie intake quite high. In terms of carbohydrates, this comes in terms of increasing calorie intake. So you want to make sure we've got sufficient carbohydrates, especially if you're still training when you're on your cycle, which there is no reason that you shouldn't. So in terms of carbohydrates, we need to increase these around your training sessions to make sure you've got adequate amount of energy. If you're struggling to consume carbohydrates, what you can do is you can almost kind of make some like fruit smoothies. So it could be some skim milk, some honey, some frozen berries, a few oats, and kind of blend it up. Because in terms of a lot of people will get cravings during this menstrual cycle, that is probably due to a reduced appetite. So therefore you're not eating an adequate amount of calories within your main meals, so therefore you're more likely to snack. So within these meals, trying to increase fruit and vegetables. So this is going to provide plentiful of micronutrients, but also fibre, which is going to keep you full. Also, the last point what I'd like to make is track and prepare. So if you know that around your cycle that you're going to be on your cycle, be prepared. So have some snacks prepared to keep in terms of your blood sugars level and your energy levels quite stable. And just be prepared that probably in terms of your training, you might need to reduce the intensity slightly to make sure that you have got the right amounts of energy in terms to throughout. One of the biggest questions we receive on a weekly basis on the Boxing Science Nutrition page via direct messages, etc., is regarding eating before bed. One of the biggest myths in nutrition is eating late at night causes fat storage. We know that the daily energy balance is the key regarding whether we gain fat or whether we lose weight. So, in terms of eating before bed, you can have carbohydrates before bed. However, you may want to adapt around this regarding on a training session. Many boxers train late in the evening, around 5-6 p.m. So if you are training late in the evening and you've probably got a training session the next day, whether it's an early morning run, strength conditioning session, you want to restore those carbohydrates so you can maintain your performance the next day. If not, it's going to lead to fatigue. Also, we do know that having an adequate amount of carbohydrates around 2 hours before bed can actually increase sleep onset time and sleep onset latency. So that means that you are likely to fall to sleep quicker. So this amount will be determined by your previous training. What we do say is having kind of higher GI carbohydrates and lower fibre are less likely to cause any kind of bloating and feeling too full so you can sleep. Also, due to it having less fibre, it's going to cause a less thermic effect of feeding, which means you're not going to be as hot when you're in bed. Number 2, in terms of protein intake, we do want protein before bed. There's a lot of studies by Luca van Loon and John Trommelin in terms of increasing protein before bed increases lean muscle mass gains and also can help appetite the following day. Also, there's some new research coming out in terms of casein protein, looking at increasing, helping in terms of ligament and tendon repair. In terms of an adequate amount, they say you want probably to double the amount as you normally would through the day, because you've got, say, 8 hours in terms whilst you're asleep. So you're probably looking at around 40 grams of protein around 2 hours before bed. This is going to help recovery from the previous training session for overnight. In terms of the protein, ideally in terms of a casein protein, so a slow release, so dairy protein is really good here, whether it's Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, it could be kind of a nighttime casein protein, which we use a lot. But also, if you haven't got those, just having protein in terms from meat or fish or eggs will be good enough to make sure you're hitting around that 40 gram mark. Number 3, in terms of water and hydration, it's important you get this right, because if you have too little, so you are dehydrated, that can affect your sleep. It can also cause probably cramping. On the opposite side, if you have too much, you are probably likely to wake up during the night and wanting to go to the toilet, which is going to affect your sleep patterns. So it's important you rehydrate from your previous training session. But what I would say is, in terms of trying to replace the 1.5 times the amount you've lost in training, if you are training late at night, I probably wouldn't go as high as that, because you are probably likely to need the toilet during the night. So in terms of the exact amount of water and hydration, you're probably looking just to be around in terms of what you lost in the previous training. But in terms of around 1 to 2 hours before bed, I would try and reduce your water intake. And that is just so you're not going to wake up during the night. The last one, in terms of fruit and antioxidants, there is some research out there in terms of kiwi fruit helping sleep onset latency, and also around cherries, and cherry juice can increase melatonin, so you're more likely to feel sleepy. But also melatonin in polyphenols is in a lot of berries, so it's in a lot of blueberries, raspberries, black currants, pomegranates, etc. So increasing these around before bed in with kind of your protein, so that could be a few berries on terms of Greek yogurt, is likely to help you recover. So it's going to help repair muscle soreness or reduce muscle damage as well, and it's also likely to help you feel quite sleepy. So these are the kind of 4 main points that we would introduce for someone to eat before bed around 2 hours before sleep. Fight week nutrition. So this is also another very popular question we receive, and it is very important, because a lot of the hard work you have done in the previous weeks before in terms of training can be undone if we do not get this right. But also what I would say is, it is pointless getting this right if the rest of the weeks in terms of training camp you haven't been on negative energy balance to make weight, and this cannot be undone. So these are 3 of quite valid points that we use in terms of a fight week nutrition. So number 1, low residue. So in terms of research in this area in sports and making weight, there is very little. It's just basically done by a lot of practitioners improvising from research around surgery. So in terms of a low residue diet, what we mean is we want to reduce fibre within your diet, and in terms of food volume. So reducing the amount of food in your stomach, you can lose some weight there. And this is roughly around about 2 to 3 pounds. So in terms of a lot of high fibre foods, we usually give fighters during the training kind of camp. So a lot of whole wheat products, a lot of big fibrous vegetables such as like cauliflower and broccoli, we will reduce these. And you want just some lower fibre foods. So this could be doing a little salad. It could be reducing the high fibre carbohydrates to probably just some kind of white rice or white pasta. So there's no fibre there, it's not going to sit in your stomach, and it's going to have a quicker transit time in terms of out of your body. Number 2, sodium. So in terms of sodium and salt, we know that this retains water. So if you're having a lot of high sodium food, so this could be a lot of seasonings, it could be a lot of electrolytes in terms of on your food, so adding a lot of salt to your food. You could even be just having a lot of kind of so-called healthy ready meals where they pack a lot of sodium in there. So we want to reduce in terms of your salt and sodium intake. So that means ruling a lot of spices, a lot of sauces out, trying to reduce a lot of salt on your meals, and just kind of eating kind of quite healthy, but also probably bland foods. And this is going to make sure you don't retain much water within your body, so therefore you can lose a few pounds that way, depending on your body size. Last one, in terms of carbohydrates. So fight week nutrition, your training intensity should be low. So that means carbohydrates aren't warranted as much. So decreasing carbohydrates, so for every 1 gram of carbohydrates you reduce, you're going to lose around 3 to 4 gram of water. So for example, if you're on a kind of high carbohydrate intake regarding the last couple of weeks of training, which you should be because you'll be sparring a lot, if you're on 400 gram of carbohydrates, you're probably likely to lose around 1 kilogram of weight if we reduce these lower. The main point what I want to say though is it's so important that you still do have some carbohydrates within your diet. And that is just so basically it's going to increase in terms of your satiety, in terms of around your training when you're having it with adequate amount of protein. But also you will still be doing some training that fight week. So doing some kind of quick and explosive movements, carbohydrates are reliant on that. There are a lot more other points what we can do in terms of fight week nutrition, and this is in our nutrition handbook Also, this is when we work with a lot with one-to-one fighters, and we can change some other variables to suit their kind of needs to make weight. So that's it from nutrition questions on Ask Boxing Science. So a lot of other nutrition information, a lot of recipes is on our Boxing Science _nutrition Instagram page. And also, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to send a direct message over and we'll try and help as much as we can.